Well, the lights came on. That's a sign from above or below, wherever it is they control those things. It is the appointed hour. It is 1 o'clock. I'll call to order the meeting of the June 19th meeting of the Oklahoma City Riverfront Redevelopment Authority. Item 2 is items from the chairman, and I don't have anything today. Item 3 is the minutes of the May 22nd meeting. Do you have any changes or corrections?
Move approval.
Cast your vote. It passes unanimously. Item 4 is a consent docket. We have an oil and gas revenue report, which still creeps up just a little bit every month, and the Oklahoma River corridor events update. Do we have any questions on either one of those?
Move the item.
Second.
Cast your vote. It passes unanimously. Item 5 is the primary agenda items. Item A is to receive the Oklahoma River maintenance projects update.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Llewellyn with the Public Works Department. On our river sedimentation basin contract that was awarded by council today, we expect the contractor to mobilize and start work within the next 30 days. We'd budgeted $1.5 million for drainage, for debris removal or sediment removal on the basin. Our channel cleaning contract is scheduled to be awarded by City Council on July 3rd. Our biggest item is with the significant rains we had recently. It washed a lot of debris downstream. Crews have been working to clear that out. Our skimmer boat was down most of last week, needing a part, but it's operational again, and they're working on it. It's the most effective on the floatable debris. They're still removing debris, but the last number I had was 21 tons of debris have been taken out of the river. Then we had, in the last month, there have been 4 volunteer cleanup activities on the river. They've removed substantial amounts of debris. That was all I had for today. Is there any questions? Thank you very much.
Motion to accept that report.
So moved.
Cast your vote. Passes unanimously. Item B is the audit contract with Allen Gibbs and Hulick for the fiscal year 17-18 for the Riverfront. Any questions on it?
Move approval.
Cast your vote. It passes unanimously. Item C is an amendment of the right-of-way grant between the city, the Riverfront Authority, and Southern Star Central Gas Pipeline for expansion of an easement crossing the Riverfront property near Northeast 36 and Air Depot. There's already an easement there. We're simply expanding that easement. There's a 25,000 plus agreement that comes with that. And any questions on it?
Does anything there affect the surface? I mean, as to what they're doing or what they're going to be doing? Because obviously, as we go along, we're trying to get rid of nasty-looking things, and I didn't know. This is a buried pipeline, I assume, is it?
It's a buried pipeline, and they'll need to put the surface back the way it was. That is the same area as the sheriff's lease is, but it's on the other side of the property. So there's no development there now.
Any other questions? Need a motion?
Move the item.
Cast your vote. It passes unanimously. Item D is an agreement to terminate the sand mining agreement between the city, Riverfront Authority, and DeLisi Brothers for the property near 50th and Midwest Boulevard. This is the property that they sand mined out of for years, and when they withdrew their operations, they did a reclamation project on it, which we've kind of been keeping tabs on. They have finished that reclamation project, and we're ready to terminate that agreement and turn it over to the Parks Department. Any questions on it?
Doug, can you kind of give us a report on the park, like?
Good afternoon, Doug Cupper, Parks and Recreation Director. As you know, this property is about 440 acres in size with a 200-acre surface acre lake pretty much in the middle of the property. The DeLisi, as part of their agreement with the city as well as with the United States government, has to remediate the property into park-like uses and things along those lines. As most of you know, they've cut in some nature trails in, and we'll be maintaining those nature trails going forward. They will be bringing in beach sand in an area. Not that we will have a beach immediately. We'll have to probably do a little bit of work on that. Right now, the gradient for going into the water isn't long enough to be safe. It kind of goes out 6 feet, and then it pretty well drops off to their 20-foot depth or so. So we're going to have to cut that back and make that a little bit longer fetch, if you will, for shallower water for a longer distance. But we will be able to, we're going to create some sand volleyball pits out there. They've cut in and seeded a couple of pickup athletic fields in close proximity to the old concrete slab that was the plant foundation that can be used for parking. It is fenced, so we will have controlled access to it. We will keep it secured so we don't end up with illegal dumping out there. We're hoping to control access so that we won't have a whole lot of people violating the property until we're ready to operate it as a true park and rec facility. Staff and I are discussing opportunities for some special events going forward that we will bring back to the trust for your perusal and approval to kind of get people interested in the property. And then long-term, we will be coming back to the trust with thoughts and ideas of how to activate that space and bring it to fruition as the newest and largest regional park that we've brought online in Oklahoma City for quite a few years. Be happy to answer any questions.
I take it, Lacey, through with their work, you reviewed that, you're content with what they've done?
Yeah, everything that they said they were going to do and then some. They even bought a bridge to cross one of the necks into a wetland area, which kind of surprised us that they even did that. It's a matching bridge to like what we have put on the river trail system throughout the river system, crossing the creeks and byways. And our fisheries biologist has been out there. It has quite a quality fisheries population out there now, and we're looking forward to possibly having some tournaments and things along those lines again with the proceeds coming to the trust.
What are you contemplating doing? You mentioned the beach and the sounded like a significant drop-off. What will you be doing there that just sort of raises the alarm bell safety-wise?
I wish I had an aerial. I wasn't going to go into too much deep detail, but where the water's edge is, we have a long piece of real estate that the edge can remain as a cofferdam, and we grade the rest of it back so that we have a gradient of probably 1 to 7, 1 to 8, maybe even 1 to 9, going for a long distance. So little kids can play in the shallower water, zero entry water before you get into the deeper water where other activities, other swimming type of activities can occur. So we see it as a fan shape, being able to cut it back and reuse that sand, and then we'll take the edge out so that, again, it slowly goes off to that 20-foot drop. It'll have to obviously be engineered so that, you know, when we've got the dozers out there, they don't end up floating. But that's our goal, is to be able to get a fan out there and have zero depth entry. But, you know, little kids will be able to play on the beach, is our hope. Again, we have to bring those ideas back to you all for your approval going forward. It's one of those 6 of one, half dozen of another. Currently, I need 150 lifeguards for our 5 swimming pools. I think we're right at about 70 right now. So we are working our lifeguards overtime to keep our 5 pools. So my aquatic staffer is going, trying to figure out how to make sure that we keep, if we do a beach, how we keep it safe.
But I think we should publicly thank Delisi for doing a good job and going above and beyond with the bridge, correct?
Well, I think the whole operation's been pretty good for the trust between the sand mining that has helped to build a lot of our buildings right here in Oklahoma City, but the royalties that the trust got off of that sand mining for the last 25 years or so has really helped perpetuate other activities that the trust has overseen over that time period. So, yeah, the Delisi is a good corporate partner. Obviously, they're the ones that pay for the trout to be stocked at their old Delisi sand mining out on the northwest side of town where we have trout fishing in the wintertime. So they've been a great corporate partner for Parks and Recreation for a long, long time. So we're real happy with what the post-closure is looking like.
Thank you.
Doug, one more. Don't we plan to bring them to a trust meeting?
That's our intent, is to have them at the July meeting
Yep.
so that you all can thank them publicly.
Any other questions? I need a motion on this agreement.
Second.
Cast your vote. It passes unanimously. Item E is amendment number 2 to the lease and operation agreement between the city, the Riverfront Authority, and the Boathouse Foundation for lease and operation of the MAPS 3 whitewater facility. I think we have Kathy here to go over those, that agreement and the numbers. I know that most of us have attended a briefing on it also.
Well, thank you. I'm Kathy O'Connor with the Alliance for Economic Development. There's an amendment before you today for your consideration to the lease with the Boathouse Foundation for the Whitewater Center. The purpose of the amendment is to reimburse the foundation for certain startup costs associated with the whitewater facility in the amount of $2 million. These startup costs were the result of extraordinary startup costs that were not anticipated when the foundation originally undertook the operation of the center. The plan is to amend the lease to require the foundation to make certain changes to their governance, their bylaws, and other governance documents. They need to restructure their board to limit the number of board of directors to 11, to add a city council person to their board, to hire a chief operating officer and a controller, to complete a strategic plan, and to create an operations committee that would have 12 members, and up to three of those could be appointed by the city manager. The funds will be provided for the capital items that were associated with these startup costs from MAPS 3, and that item will go through the River Subcommittee, and then the MAPS Advisory Board, and then on to City Council. The other approximately $1.25 million will come from the city's general fund. It'll be transferred to the authority so that you can then pay it out to the foundation. In order for the foundation to receive the funds, they have to complete certain things. First of all, they have to agree to the amendment. Then they would receive the first, the MAPS money would be provided to them first. The $759,000 roughly would be provided first. Then as they complete other actions, if they restructure their board of directors and initiate their strategic plan, they would receive an additional $750,000, and then the last $490,000 would be upon the hiring of their chief operating officer. And those two things could happen one before the other. There's no real sequence on those. So the idea was to make sure that they were accountable for completing the actions that are spelled out in the amendment before they receive the money. But that really sums it up. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Kathy?
Go ahead, Larry. The Land and Water Use Committee met prior to the trust meeting, and we recommended that the trust approve this second agreement.
Larry?
I was reminded that I was briefed on this a couple of weeks ago, I guess, in a city council briefing. At that time, I did not, my fault, did not make the connection that maybe I'd be called on to make a recommendation for this. But since having that brought to my attention, I look at this as we have a business entity in operation down there in the canal zone. And at this particular point in history, our expenses have exceeded our revenue to the effect that we've got in here about $1 million. We've got $700,000 in startup cost and $1,200,000 in operation cost that, without seeing the figures, I'm assuming we don't have the money to pay. And if we were coming in as a consulting group to an operation like this, there'd be certain documents, certain figures that we'd ask for. Very simply, we'd ask for how much money do we totally owe right now? And I'm assuming hopefully that's the two figures I just quoted there. What is the projected revenue as we go into this next fiscal year? They're on a fiscal year?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so the starting of the fiscal year is July 1.
This is a reoimbursement of costs that they have already paid. They've already incurred these costs. So
That's money that's owed. That's accounts payable that's owed, is it not? Do we not owe somebody this money?
The foundation does have some outstanding accounts payable that this will help take care of. They entered into certain, we in addition to the work to prepare this amendment, we undertook an organizational analysis of the Boathouse Foundation operation, including a complete financial analysis going back several years. The real struggle that they've been having is that the nonprofit sector, the philanthropic community, has changed dramatically in the last 2 or 3 years. Some of that is due to the decline in the oil and gas industry, and some of it is due to the death of Aubrey McClendon. They are not receiving the level of donations that they did 3 years ago, and it isn't just through Chesapeake and through Mr. McClendon, it's also just through other oil and gas companies in Oklahoma City. They have already incurred a great deal of expenses. They have financial obligations in place to meet those expenditures. However, they do experience cash flow problems, especially during the off-season. So some of this is to help them pay off some of those obligations, create some working capital, and get back into a more sustainable financial condition for the future.
Well, my question is this, based on the information that I've already knew and what you just shared with me, Kathy, is I don't know whether this is a sustainable operation or not. Is the forecasted revenue coming from sales, coming from donations? That's what we've got going forward. You've also got some amount of money, possibly cash on hand. Mm-hmm. But from what I hear you saying, that's probably a de minimis amount compared to what we're talking about. Then we're going to have projected expenses for the next 12 months. Mm-hmm. When you throw that into a very simple P&L formula, do we have the wherewithal to keep this thing afloat?
We believe that they do. I can't guarantee that everything will remain the same or stay as it is now, or that they'll have an extraordinarily successful summer and be able to not have a wet, rainy, cold spring next year. That's what really has been impacting them as well. But right now, it looks like from their P&L, from where their revenues are, where their expenses are, they are able to be a sustainable organization. I think that they've experienced some problems these first 2 years of operation, just like any startup typically does, and they didn't have sufficient, probably, working capital to be a startup.
Will this attack plan that we've outlined, we're talking about right now, provide enough working capital to get us through a potential emergency?
I hope so, yes. Yeah, but they have other changes they need to make. I mean, there are other, getting a chief operating officer in there, making some other operational changes are really critical to making sure that this is a long-term sustainable operation.
Well, that's my whole question, Mr. Chairman, is this sustainable with the figures we've got? And do we have the data that we're forecasting off of? And then can we plan the contingencies? A good month in a bad month. We know we're going to have bad months, or we're going to have virtually zero revenue coming in. That's all been platted out for the next, say, 12 months.
We have all of that. We're working to verify it and work through all the details on it. But that's one of the reasons why the changes that are recommended and are part of the amendment are in there. Hire a chief operating officer, hire a controller. They need a little bit higher level of financial ability within the organization than what they have right now. So, we're trying to make sure they make those changes.
And the other thing that many companies have to do when they get into a situation similar to this is they have to cut expenses. Has that been looked at?
And they have done that. And they frankly may have done it too far. You can go too far.
So of the $2 million, and I don't need to know the exact, I mean, how much of that $2 million is going to pay obligations that they currently have outstanding, and how much is going to be left for the working capital approximately, or do you know?
What I would hope is that they could set aside about $500,000 for working capital, and that the rest would be used to either pay some of their outstanding obligations.
Yes, Mark?
Look to Marcia for a little guidance here. Look at this. Conflict. Be in the best interest for me to recuse or abstain.
I'd recluse yourself.
And we can research that as a council.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? A vote, a positive vote from us simply sends it to council for concurrence, I believe, in 2 weeks. It was the schedule they're working on, is that right?
We're going to go July 3rd, so
Okay.
And it would be for council approval.
yeah, right, correct.
Yes.
Your sheet says advisory board.
Yes, it'll go to the River Subcommittee next week and to the advisory board next week, and then everything goes to City Council July 3rd.
Move this item for approval.
Yeah, the advisory board and all that is on the 700 and something thousand of the MAPS money.
Right. Yes, all they're concerned about is the $759,000 from MAPS.
I'll second the item.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Cast your vote. It passes unanimously. Item F is a revocable permit with Prodigal for the 2018 Downtown Fourth Fest, using portions of Regatta Park and the river trails in the parking lot. Any questions on this?
I have one question. Western Enterprises is supposed to handle the fireworks display. Do they have a permit, a separate permit to do that? And when will that be approved?
The fireworks side of it is they have to go to the fire marshal and get their permit, and then it'll be on the city council's agenda for their revocable to do the fireworks. But we are processing it the way we normally would and in a timely fashion, so we think we'll be all right.
And Doug,
Yes.
that'll be on the council agenda on the 3rd?
Yes. It's right now we're slating it for July 3rd. Obviously, I have to get the fire marshal before we can get it into the system, but the intent is to have city council approve it on the 3rd. After you all approve it and recommend it, go to city council.
I guess one day before beats 1 month after. We're making a little progress here. Okay, all right. Do we have any other questions?
Second.
I get a motion? Cast your vote. It passes unanimously. Item 6 is claims. We don't have any. Item 7 is additional comments by staff. You have the Parks and Rec Director's report. Anything you want to add, Doug, other than the written report?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chairman, but I do want to point out a couple of highlights. I think I've mentioned it before, but the National Recreation Park Association, which is our national organization out of Washington, D.C., has never, ever had an event in Oklahoma City until last month. And we had delegates from most of the major cities, Chicago, L.A., New Orleans, New York, Boston, and places in between, came to Oklahoma City to see what we have been able to do with maps, to understand how maps has changed our environment and really the topography of Oklahoma City. And they were completely thrilled with it. Some of them have taken ideas back to their own cities. In fact, my colleague in L.A. has already created his own L.A. Maps program to try to benefit some of his park system. So we're real thrilled with 80 or 100 Parks and Rec professionals coming and seeing what you all have been able to accomplish over the last 20 years here. I think one of the other things that I want to point out is we have been working with city care folks to make sure that they are healthy and whole and can continue to operate Crystal Lake on all of ours benefit. They've had some struggles this spring. The grounds maintenance people had to step in and mow a couple of times for them, and we actually had to go out and get the area ready for the grand dedication of the memorial that was established out there at Crystal Lake. So again, most of that is falling on David Birch, and I want to publicly acclaim David is really stepping up and making things happen for the trust as it relates to your properties. He's getting out there and inspecting your lands to make sure that we don't have additional illegal dumping. He has initiated conversations with the police department. They have a new watch captain for the bureau that takes care of most of the river. He's initiated conversations with them to continue the enforcement of the no dumping, no illegal cars, trucks, swimming, things along those lines. But other than that, I appreciate the opportunity and recommend that you accept the report as written.
Any questions for Doug? Motion to accept?
Move the item.
Second.
Cast your vote. It passes unanimously. Any other staff comments? Any comments from trustees? Any citizens to be heard? We are adjourned.